Welcome to the ABQ Accent, where catalysts, innovators, and risk takers share what their accent is on their work. Like a spoken accent, we all have an inflection or emphasis on where we put our energy. Join us to learn how these folks are putting their accents to work, building their vision of the future, and how you can get involved. Hello and welcome so much. I'm very excited to talk to Shana Baker today on the Albuquerque Accent. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. So we have a lot to talk about today, and I want to just give a little bit of background about you, and then I'm going to open the floor for you to share more, even things that I imagine I don't know, having known you for so long. Ms. Shana Baker was raised in Texas, and we have the privilege of having her be a Lobo alumni from the UNM Law School, 2022 or 2002.
Yes.
Yeah, time flies. And she's also a founding member of Albuquerque Involved. And if you haven't heard of that, we're going to talk a little bit about that and definitely plug it. This is a member-based giving group here in town. There's also a lot of volunteer activities that they take part in. And for a very long time, you've been managing you could say day-to-day operations, but I think we're working on integrating more of the board members into all of the operations. And I think that's a unique thing about that particular organization.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So overall, I mean, your background is in legal work, but you also have experience in political campaigning, small business development, and I know that you still do a lot of advocacy work in addition to your board member roles. So how's that for at least the start to get you, and then to get you to back up on who you are and where you come from?
That's great. That's great. I appreciate that. So I am not a native New Mexican, but I feel like I am. Yeah. So I grew up in Texas, but my dad and his wife and my brothers and sisters were here. And so my husband and I like to joke that we had the opposite schedules, that I was in Santa Fe over Christmas break and during the summer, and he was the opposite. So we always say that we could have met on a Southwest Airlines flight going back and forth from Dallas to Albuquerque, but we never did. But I came to Santa Fe after graduating from college and working in D.C. for a little while for a presidential campaign a very, very long time ago, and started working there and really fell in love with the idea of UNM as a law school. Law school had been an idea that I'd toyed with at Smith, but Smith is on the East Coast. Everyone I knew that went from college went to Harvard and Yale and had a very different idea of law school than what UNM is. So the clinical practice about UNM and really getting to help people at the moment you start, having it be a public interest law school, having it be an extremely affordable law school, so that it is open and accessible to way more people than what I think of as a traditional Ivy League East Coast law school. Not that there's anything wrong with that. No. So I forgot where we were going, but that's what brought me to Albuquerque to law school. And then really fell in love with the idea of, Albuquerque is a really great, manageable size, right? People know each other. People have the ability to connect with each other. And so as you were mentioning, Albuquerque Involved is really an idea that, my law school roommate and I came up with, and still do that, here 10 years later, a way that we really felt like people could get involved in their community, but didn't really know how. And it's something that I came from, volunteering in high school, Key Club and community service and things like that. And so really just to bring it and put it in people need things in a nice little package so they know what to expect when they get there. And so we talk a lot at Albuquerque Involved about, we will find out the place where you should go volunteer. We will find out, we need to make sure there's the right number of them, where you're going to park, what door you're going to walk in. And it really does take those things, I think, to help a lot of people sort of overcome their barriers to getting up and going and doing something for the community on a Saturday or whenever.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're thinking so much about the experience. You're curating an event for volunteers that might not have ever gone and gotten out of their shell or their community and their bubble to do something new.
Exactly. And I think
we take their kids.
Yes, and take their kids. Well, curating is exactly right. And when we started, it's been 10 years, but when we started, my oldest was 7. And so we knew that we wanted them to learn, everybody on the board had kids about that age. And we knew we wanted to show them that volunteering wasn't something that you just do right around Christmas, right? Which we still in America really have that culture, unfortunately. And so we wanted them to see that it's something you do every day. They didn't quite understand the philanthropy part about it, but they do now, and as they've gotten older. And so we looked for events that, again, we really were going to help, right? We talked to a lot of executive directors. We work with a lot of small organizations that don't have volunteer coordinators, and say, what do you need done? Do you need the office painted? Do you need the carpet pulled up? Do you need these kinds? And so also Dathan just likes doing stuff like that, which is the other reason why we do a lot of yard work and pull a lot of weeds, because those are the things that organizations don't want to have to use their already underpaid, overworked staff for. And so those are things that we can come in and try to take that load off a little bit. So it is a nonprofit for nonprofits as much as it is a nonprofit that helps community members find where they want to volunteer.
Right. And I know that over the last 10 years, it's been evolving and growing in its own ways. What do you think is maybe the most noticeable growth or change evolution piece of the organization for you?
To me, I think it is that we don't have to explain why we're doing what we're doing so much anymore, right? We did spend a lot of, we could go all the way back to me. 10 years ago, I'd spent months calling in people and saying, can I come interview you when we need to give you this money?
Oh, interesting.
And the grant was only $1,000 then. It was also 10 years ago. But, that we were showing people who we were and trying to say, can we give you this money? And that it was a very small group. We used to joke that we knew everybody that was on the roll, on the membership rolls. So the most notable difference is size and scope, I think. Even though we're not in, the first thought on everybody's mind when it comes to volunteering or public service, it is widely spread enough that people think of us, both a family that wants to get involved but doesn't know if the kids are allowed or what kind of shoes you're supposed to wear or where to go. Offices and things like that want to do a team building exercise, and instead of going and doing something in the woods, they want to pass out food to the community or do something. And so the fact that we are on people's radar, but also that we don't have to explain why we're doing what we're doing. And that's more about the grant piece, I guess. So we've talked a lot about the volunteerism, but the philanthropy piece for Albuquerque Involved is this idea that you may have a little bit of money that you can donate to put back into the community. But if you don't feel like that's enough to make an impact, you have to put it together with everybody else that feels like that and give it the money away so that it's actually impacting a nonprofit. So you can give any amount of money that you want. We have members. I have members that have given for 3 years and have still only given $1 a month, and they vote every month and they come and look at what organizations we're giving to, but that we can turn that members literally turn her dollar into $3,000 every month, and she can feel like she is doing that is really sort of, that was the goal, that was the purpose. And some people give $25 a month, and some people have their kids join and do $5, but it's just a way to sort of, let's pool our money so that we can buy something bigger.
Yeah, there's a whole trajectory there that you mentioned a couple of pieces, and maybe we should talk a little bit about the structure, if you will, of the organization, because it's, as we said, it's a member-based group, but the volunteer activities, you don't have to be a member to be involved.
The membership base is really only that's just a way of describing how people are giving, right? When we think about giving once a year at the end of the year or whenever it is and given bigger sums, this kind of making volunteerism and philanthropy part of what you do every day is more how this model fits. So I sign up and give my $25 a month. It's an automatic transaction off your credit card. And every month you get to see where the money goes. Some months you can be very involved and look at all the nonprofits and go to their websites and see what they're up to. And some months, if you have a lot more going on in your life and you don't have the time or bandwidth to see who those 3 organizations are, you can know that we are still responsibly investing your money every month and saying, here are 3 local nonprofits who have told us that this, relatively small amount of money will actually help them or add to another project. So we call it membership just because it's a monthly recurring giving donation as opposed to something that you just do once a year. Members can come to the monthly service projects, but anybody can come to the monthly service projects. We put them on Eventbrite. We put them on our website. I'm sure those things sound really old to any young person who is listening. So if any young person wants to tell us how
A better way, different way.
better way to find young people to come to things, we're taking suggestions. But the social media presence that you've been such a huge part of to really get our name out there so that people, so that people don't have to end that thought process with, I should really go out and do something. And we like to be there to fill in that spot to say, yep, and here's 2 things you can come do with us, and we'll meet you there, and we'll have on a T-shirt and a name tag, and you'll know who we are, and we can hand you a bottle of water and tell you where you're supposed to go.
Right.
Which helps, again, as we talked about, break down those barriers for people and make lives easier for some of these smaller nonprofits who to put on a volunteer event takes more work than to not. So,
yeah, I think I want to acknowledge that your answer in the evolution of it really, I want to make you blush, has so much to do of the work, thanks to you, that you've been doing over the years for those either one-on-one calling or reaching out to organizations to tell them to apply to the grant, looking for very active board members, getting other families involved. There's a growth there that's reflective of the people who are already members and leaders on the board, that there's a reason that you're a curator and have stayed for so long. Because and that's why so many of us have joined, because we really believe in that. While membership is a recurring thing and it's a transaction and give us an opportunity to have a voice in where the money goes, it's also a bit of a culture that you guys are trying to develop in that, and this is where I'm going, in the philanthropy trajectory of where somebody could be in their own life, just with what they have and what they're capable of doing.
Absolutely. When we talk about, and we've had groups of college students that have, joined us for a while, and every different age group, every different kind of person knows that, I think they know that one of the ways that you can feel better about your situation is to look out into the world and see, right? I mean, of course, I will take this woman's dollar every month to give to philanthropy because she has a dollar that lots of people don't have. Right. And so that's incredibly important for everyone to see. To see where they are in the world and how they can, no matter what they have, they can help somebody else.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, gosh, there are a lot of things that I want to be sure people understand about Involved and how to get involved. Before we're done talking today. And I also want to understand a little bit more about you.
Yes.
And while Albuquerque Involved is a huge piece of your life and a huge piece of your heart, there are some really amazing things that I think you're also putting into the community through being on a board or volunteering on your own that maybe some of us don't even know about. You just sort of do your own thing. And I want to also acknowledge that you're a beautiful, wonderful mother to 2 fabulous sons. You and your husband have a very loving and very supportive family, and I think that part of what you're trying to share with them is what you're trying to share with other families. Yeah. So, what is it about maybe your life these days that you're most excited about and enjoy in your interaction with the community?
I mean, I think you mentioned the boys, and we have a son that's about to graduate from high school, and it is blowing my mind, and I know it's blowing yours too, right? Everybody else. I mean, the other thing about not being super good about the website photos is that I believe today you could still go on the Albuquerque Involved website and see Joshua at 7 years old, and he's about to graduate from high school. He'll love
Mental
that.
Note.
Mental note.
We're going to update pictures.
That's right. Embarrassing pictures of Joshua. I don't know. I kind of think we need to put the baby pictures up, right? So there's this group of, 30 kids, basically, that have been raised to think that that's what they do on the weekends. And I will use that story, right? So Josh, went last summer, he's like, I'm going to get a job. We talked about all the things. And it's funny that you say that because I think about all the things we do to make sure that it's easy for people to do what they want to do. And truly my things with him were, okay, even though you have a driver's license, it should probably be somewhere that you could get to really quickly. It could probably be somewhere that you don't have to be there super early or super late, right? Set yourself up for success. Let's get there. And so he went to Bus Tables at Duran's, a place that you and I have eaten many times while he has served us or picked up after us. He came home after the first day and he goes, oh, it's just like volunteering, except I got paid.
Oh, I love that.
And I was like, whoa, we did it. But right, so if I can get that from every teenager and adult person, everybody who thinks that that's really sort of the threshold, which is you should be getting up and doing something for somebody else every Saturday, whether you get paid or not.
I love that.
So that's what we're doing. Just the idea that, and I think you've done a really good job this morning of helping me focus on this, which is how do we make it part of our everyday, right? How do we make part of, whether it's sharing whatever money you have with somebody else, whatever food you have with somebody else, whatever time you have with somebody else. And so I do, one of the other volunteer projects, or it's not really a project, but one of the volunteer things that I did last year that I'm not doing right now because of the legislative session, but is working with the organizations here in Albuquerque that help women who come from other states to seek reproductive care in New Mexico.
Right.
New Mexico has a lot to be proud of,
Yes,
and
we do.
that is very much at the top of my list. We're not at the top of a lot of lists, but we're at the top of that one. And again, that idea of, I didn't really have to, we think we're going to have to make this huge sacrifice to help somebody who needs something from us. And it's just not true. And so to sign up to pick up women from the airport who were flying in from various cities in Texas to receive abortions in Albuquerque is something that we can't always do it because it's not always something that's safe. It was the easiest, fastest, most impactful thing I did with my whole day. I mean, I kind of felt like that was it. I can do nothing for the rest of the day. Because really without taking literally less than an hour out of my own day, costing me no money, costing me very little time and very little effort, you can make a huge impact and help someone at a critical moment. And I think that is just something that we need to think about kind of in our everyday. It doesn't have to be this big, amazing, remarkable thing. It just has to be something that we are able to do and sort of integrate into what we're doing on a daily basis. And that's how the kids see that that's what you're supposed to be doing. And that's how everybody around you sort of sees that that's how we connect and get everybody kind of closer to the same starting line.
Well, and also the people that you're touching maybe in that 1 hour of your day, they'll never forget that experience and the impact that you made on improving their situation. And it might be driving somebody, it might be volunteering for anything else.
Right.
But those people will remember that somebody did what they could.
Sure. And if that just doesn't have anything to do with me, that just has something to do with hoping that people get that the world is not as bad of a place as maybe they thought it was.
And that's hard.
And that's really hard. And that's really hard. So that's really it, right? When you talk about is there some recognition that I'm looking for? Yes, I'm looking for the recognition that even though somebody doesn't know sort of who I am or what we are or what we're doing, that whoever we have helped just acknowledges that it happened. Not even to anyone, but just that it did happen, right? That they didn't have to or that organization didn't have to call one more person to show up that day, right? That we've made somebody's day easier. And that's how you make lives easier, by making days easier, right?
It's a ripple effect. Or snowball, both.
Yes.
Yeah, and I might have to say this one more time, but with the recognition thing, that's one of your superpowers is that you are capable of doing so much work behind the scenes that we might not know enough about what you're doing. But so much productivity comes out of just your compassion. Really, it does. And
Thank you.
It's not easy to see unless somebody's really paying attention. And I want to give you a lot of kudos for the work that you do behind the scenes, whether you're driving or whether you're on an email or whether you're making phone calls or whether you're harassing me about posting something on Instagram. It's appreciated.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you posting the things on Instagram.
So what else is it about? I think the trajectory, like we're talking about the philanthropy and what you're trying to teach the boys and to provide an example for not just them, but other families and individuals about learning to integrate this into whatever their life looks like, whatever life they're curating for themselves. Albuquerque Involved has a relatively new to us program called Albuquerque Involved Mentees.
Yes.
And we call it short Aimers.
Yes.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and the perspective of why we integrated that in the program.
So it started, as a lot of nonprofit things do, we just didn't, somebody else couldn't do it anymore and we didn't want it to die because it was a great idea, right? So this came from the brilliant Sarah Newman, who used to be at Ronald McDonald House.
Right.
And she and Kristen Reutford came up with the Ronald McDonald House. I think they were called ambassadors. That was one of the first things we changed.
Something like that.
And it was, it's very similar in the same kind of 15 to 20 high school kids, sophomores and juniors. And at the time, they came and it was really just a project of Ronald McDonald House. So they spent time working with the families there, cooking at Ronald McDonald House, and spending their time there. And they met once a month and worked with Sarah. And when Ronald McDonald House had to shift away from that program, she called me and said, "Do you want a high school program?" I was like, "Sure." And so we have continued to do that through the pandemic on Zoom, but also are able to get them back in person volunteering. And so it has changed since then. It is open to high school students 9 through 12. Multiple years of participation are encouraged. And the program is now underwritten with its own $10,000 grant,
So amazing.
which is a yearly gift from Doctors Nancy Croker and Joe Gorvetzian, who are just the embodiment of Albuquerque Involved. They're like, "Ooh, that seems like something we could solve by doing this. Let's do that." They really are, we'll write that little check, we'll show up and do that, we'll do it. So very much along our same philosophy. And so the high schoolers are able to put out and read and select a grant applicant. They can give away the money in any way they want. One $10,000 grant, two $5,000 grants. It's interesting, in the couple of years since last year, they really were paying attention to giving it away in a larger amount. They have started to comment on, $1,000 isn't what it used to be to a nonprofit. And I think that's very, very true. I mean, they have to buy the same groceries we go to buy, and they're feeding hundreds of people. So it is, so they're seeing that. And so they get to see how to sort of go through and look at philanthropy from that perspective. And then we talk with them about the problems or the issues that they see in Albuquerque and how we can go sort of tackle them really sort of physically, right? Let's talk about giving a grant to this organization. Let's talk about going to do a volunteer project at this organization. Let's talk about doing a drive. And so getting them when they're that young. I mean, they think they're just putting it on their college application, but they're secretly learning that the world doesn't have to be a terrible place.
Yeah. And that they have agency.
Yes. Yeah. And I've been very impressed with their choices. I've been impressed with the things that they have chosen to fund. What was it this last year? I think there was 3 of them. So there was 3. So they gave to, so the recognition of the problem of domestic violence and the homelessness that is created by domestic violence is really one of the things that they were able to recognize in giving away money this year. Yeah. I swear I didn't tell them. They really figured it out. So they gave their money to Suriname, which, if you're not familiar, is an organization that houses single-parent families who are experiencing homelessness, usually through domestic violence, and it provides educational support and support to the whole family. And then they gave to a new scholarship program that was started by, is very much like a family foundation, which is, again, a little different for our group. But it's a family foundation that created a scholarship for a loved one who died from domestic violence, who was killed by her partner and was never able to realize sort of her higher education goals. And so it's a scholarship for people who are emerging from that situation and looking for a way to get some education and go on to the next thing.
They're hitting me in all the fields.
I know. And teenagers.
So proud of them.
And teenagers gave to this.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. And there was another one. Was it Trans Resource Center?
That was last year. Last year they're but they've given to Locker 505, right? So they get I think
Spectrum.
it's a spectrum, but I think the point that you're making about this year is so interesting, right? Because they've given to Transgender Resource Center, which is wonderful and fabulous, but they also know that there is something about them that is being served in that way, right? Transgender Resource Center serves teens. Locker 505, which is a student clothing bank, serves, again, most of these kids aren't in need of those services, but they are aware that other kids at their school are. So things that were very sort of close to them and familiar to them and, these aren't. And so the fact that they're able to really look outside themselves, which teenagers aren't generally good at doing. So.
Yeah, I think, and a couple of the board members are active in that leading that group. And I think the reason why students have been coming back is because that type of camaraderie is being built. That they're learning together, and they're part of a community that's totally separate from all the different schools they represent.
Definitely. And that was one of the, that was certainly one of the goals, and still is the main goal, which is to have, I think the secret unspoken holy grail goal is 2 kids from every high school in town.
Oh yeah, I love that.
So yeah.
And the other unspoken goal to them maybe is that we want them to continue on the trajectory into college or community college or into their workplaces, some version of their problem solving skills or volunteerism.
Right.
And philanthropy. Yeah.
Right. And just this idea that it's not, we talk about the things that I do. And so I also volunteer for one of our state legislators. But I would never, and I look at her all the time, I'm like, oh my God, why are you doing this? I mean, you and I both have said this to her. It's a lot. And it feels so unfixable, and it feels so big, and it feels so removed from kind of the daily things that we see when we do this. And so I think there's something much more, it's just like the best kept secret, that if people would just come volunteer and see that you're like, oh, that happened and now it's better, right? That it can be done on such a micro scale, and the impact in how you feel at the end of the day, how the person that you helped feels at the end of the day, how the nonprofit leader who didn't have to do it herself feels. So all of those things, and teaching that as early as we can, because it's those little things that really make a difference. And I think that sometimes the big things can be too overwhelming, too unsolvable.
And it's easier to remove yourself if it feels that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think so much of this is because you've been so involved for so long, is sort of an intrinsic knowledge in you, and you're doing your very best to sort of get it out in the world. And people like me and others on our board and people around you are looking to you for so much. How do I do life? And also, how do I help others? And you're not only active, but you're providing an emotional example for us. And so I want to acknowledge how supportive you are of the people in your life, and clearly me is one of them. So I wonder, it might not always even feel like you're doing so much lifting, but from the outside looking in, it looks like you're a very hard worker and very active all the time, doing something and taking care of others, so many other people, your family members in addition. How is it that you sort of come back to a sense of self, of Shana, where she can not even worry about the next day, but what do your quiet moments of gratitude look like? And peace and rest.
Well, just that I get to do these things, right? That I don't have 2 jobs, that I don't have 3 jobs, that I don't have to, that everything doesn't have to be about survival. I mean, there are so many people that are experiencing, and now more than ever, that every day is about making sure they have the rent paid or food on the table and things like that for their kids. And it's really just about and that's purely luck. It is purely luck that I am able to do this. And so I can't imagine not doing it and taking that for granted. And so I think that is what I think about.
Yeah. Well, and also I don't know that, I think that you're not alone in this, right? You're not the only person spinning the plates. Right. You do this in partnership, and that kind of makes it possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I don't ever, if you know me, I don't usually say it like this. I usually say it more of this is so easy, I don't know why everybody doesn't do it. Yeah. Or it's not that, that it is very accessible. And so to be able to, and why would you not, I guess, is the other thing that I think about, which is typically more how I would say something, right? Which is, why would you not, if you have the luck and privilege to have the time and energy and space to do things for people who can't right now, why would you not? Why would you be doing anything else?
Maybe that's the other superpower you have, is asking the questions that people need to hear.
Maybe.
And being real articulate towards people that need to learn about it, but with a sense of compassion, if you will.
That's right.
Yeah. So we only have a couple more minutes, and I want to be able to be sure that you are leaving the space with a sense of, is there a message? I feel like with this whole thing has been a message of you saying, why would you not?
Why would you not?
But also, what do you want people to sort of know about Albuquerque that you have figured out that you wish other people knew? And what's the best way to get involved?
I feel like Albuquerque, I think about the size of Albuquerque a lot. And I guess not in just the how many people live here, but how many people are living here experiencing a particular thing and how many people have the ability to. It just seems very doable. And I said this to you earlier. Like, I feel like we have our arms around it. We just are sometimes, we have analysis paralysis sometimes in Albuquerque where we're like, is this the best thing to do? Well,
Right.
I don't know, but let's try it and see if it works.
Right.
And then let's at the same time try 3 other things that might also work. But let's try them all at the same time and figure it out. And so I think that that's one of the things about Albuquerque is that people are, I think it's right. We all know each other. There's enough connection. There's enough sharing. People don't seem, maybe I won't say that. I was going to say people don't seem to be very territorial, but that may be not true. Once in a while. Right. But that we are sort of able to get out of our own way and just say, well, let's do this. And this sort of unrelenting love for Albuquerque.
Yes.
I mean, and, I'm a Texan. We have ridiculous state mottos about how much we love each other. I mean, we wanted to be our own country, right? And so I get that pride. But Albuquerque is sort of unique in that way, in that it's like, we know we have stuff to do, but we need to work on it, and let's all work on it together. And I think that is one of the things that I feel like I see a lot here.
I love that. And I think that we can work on it together in a number of ways, namely getting involved in Albuquerque Involved. Yes. How would they do that?
Call me and ask. No, I'm just kidding. But that is how most people do it.
You're very reachable.
I
You're
am very
accessible.
reachable. Send me a text message. Ask me if you want to do. I'll find something for you to do. Our website. Again, I feel old when I say things like this, but our website has a calendar of all of our events. It also has information about where the grant money is going every month, and social media put on by our brave and intrepid Mariah Harrison. We'll usually link you to, so we're on Facebook and we're on Instagram. Right. Is that right? Yeah.
That's the thing about it.
To find sort of what we're doing, where we're volunteering in the community. And we could talk for another 30 minutes or hour and a half about how volunteering has changed.
Right.
We started talking about that a little bit last night, about sort of what nonprofits learned during the pandemic, about how to use volunteers and how to be a volunteer. So we could talk for a whole nother half an hour about that, because you don't have to leave your house to be a volunteer anymore. So if you look it up, we'll find a way to. So look on the website. That's where all of our grant activity and our calendar for our service events are.
Perfect. I appreciate that so much. Shana, again, thank you so much for your heart and your work and your time today. And it sounds to me like we'll have you back. Thank you.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Thank you.
And to everybody who joined us today, thank you so much. We hope you come back to hear another ABQ Access.